Welcome, everybody, to Football Discussion Daily. I'm Joe. I'm here with my co host,
EGO, it's nice to be
CGO.
here. Yeah.
CGO, or George. Today is the 20th of January, 2026, and today we'll be discussing Bodo Glimt 3, Manchester City 1, today in Norway. And that was a Champions League match day 7 result. Manchester City went to Bodo Glimt, who has never won a game in Champions League for how long, George? 10, 15 years? Something like that.
This this is their
2007.
first Champions League appearance. So what
And
it means is that this is their first Champions League win.
they went, they hosted Manchester City. They scored two early goals. They scored a third, and then Manchester City um,
Got one.
scored one.
Yeah,
No,
through
no.
Checky.
And
Through Ryan
then
Checky. Yeah.
Manchester City got a red card. It was
Yeah.
actually two yellows in quick succession. Rodri stopped two counterattacks within like 45 seconds or something like that
It's
to
about
stop
53 seconds.
a fourth goal. Both were breakaways that Rodri stopped, and Bodo Glimt came away with the win in Champions League match day 7. And again, I believe every player on Manchester City probably cost more than the entire Bodo Glimt squad. Every player on Manchester City probably gets paid more than the entire budget of Bodo Glimt. So quite the day. George, what are your thoughts?
Well, it was not the result many football followers really expected. For those who have knowledge about the game, I'm sure many never expected to see Bodo Glimt uh, pull that kind of surprise against Manchester City. 10 years, 10 years ago, this club called Bodo Glimt were still playing the second tier of the Norwegian League. And for them to come to their first Champions League and perform in this way is something that's highly commendable. This is their first win in the Champions League. Proud to this game, they've only secured three draws and three losses. So playing their seventh Champions League game, uh, they were able to get that win against Manchester City. So it's a very important win for them, especially when it comes to the club history. So, bottom glimpse, when you watch them, you see those glimpses of a team that has prospects. They are very energetic and they're a very good team. Even before the game, I think their last game before this Champions League game against Manchester City, I remember they played against Borussia Dortmund in Germany and they were able to get a 2-2 draw in that game. So it's not a team that you can just run over. You might win them, but you have to sweat. You sweat for you to get the win. So I'm very, very impressed with what they did in this game. And it was a very disappointing result for Manchester City because the level Manchester City has attained, one would expect them to get at least nothing less. Even a draw will not be seen as a good result. But losing is a very embarrassing result so far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, a couple things stood out to me is that number one, like on the balance of play, this was a Bodo Glimt played better. Like this
Of
was not an
course.
accident. Oftentimes when bigger clubs lose to smaller clubs, what happens is, you know, the smaller club just happens to finish two chances against the run of play and wins 2-1. That was not what happened here. I don't know that I haven't seen the XG stats. You have to pay for those, but there was much better chances on Bodo Glimt every single time. All three of their goals were wide open on defense. Man City had a couple players, some big names, some newer players who did not have good games. I'll specifically bring up Max Elene, who we talked about in the Manchester Derby, had a bad game. Pep subbed him off at halftime. Very poor today again. And this is his third ever start for Man City. Like I had not really heard of him before Saturday. Not really impressed with the start of his career, but he's also thrust in a very high pressure situation with the Manchester Derby Saturday. Second player is Rodri, who was the best player in the world 18 months ago. 18 months ago, he had just won a Ballon d'Or. He had won Euros with Spain. He was coming off four straight titles with City, and was, in my opinion, the best midfielder in the world. Tears the ACL, and he's been hit or miss this season in the EPL. Today he was miss. He had two very weak, very obvious yellow cards that I feel like you can't argue with. He grabbed players in the back as they were going back. I don't feel like Rodri of 5 years ago would have made that bad calls. I do feel like, uh, you can always forgive one, but you don't do what he did on the second yellow when you're already on a yellow card. It was very dumb play that you don't really see from Rodri. So overall, just poor performance from Manchester City today. I don't know. What are you thinking,
No,
George?
no, the issue is that Rodri, remember, he has been out for almost a year. He has been struggling with injury after winning the Ballon d'Or in 2024. I think injury has not been fair to him, and for a player who has been out for a very long time, for him to bounce back, I think he needs some time. So if you look at the way he plays, even against Manchester United, you notice he's still struggling with fitness. There was a time he came back and then went back again. He was sidelined. So what it means is, I'm thinking Manchester City has to be careful not to rush him, because when you rush such kind of player, they may not be able to get to their best. So I think they need to take the process gradually so that Rodri can get back to full fitness. He's a player that I love the way he plays, the way he handle the midfield, but I think people need to be very patient with him. It needs time for him to get to that level which we've always known him to be.
But George, I mean, he tore his ACL. I mean, it was 17 months ago at this point. That is plenty of time for a player who's supposedly, at one point of his life, the best player in the world to get back to fitness. At this point, I think it might be something else. I think that it could be, some players genuinely decline a lot faster in their late 20s, earlier 30s. Some players play well into their 30s. Some players start declining in their late 20s. It could be anything, and I think that we'll see. But he would not play well. I do feel like. Um, he has not been a normal self in the Premier League. I've seen flashes of it, but not the consistency. For you,
No,
George,
but
is this the biggest upset in the history of the Champions League?
before I respond to that, players need in game they need to play games for them to be able to get up to speed. Just like you see Kopama. Kopama has not been at his best since he came back from the groin injury. He has been struggling. He hasn't been at his best. He needs game time for him to get to that point where everybody has known him to be in the past. So same thing should also apply to Rodri, who has been out for a very long time. So I think Rodri needs game time for him to get to that point. And then regarding the aspect of if this is the
George, I want to address your point. You kind of have expectations for a younger player versus an older player. Cole Palmer is 23 years old, has been in 3 or 4 different managers in 2.5 years at Chelsea, 3.5 years at Chelsea. Rodri has been at Man City for 5 or 6 years, had the same exact manager the entire time, and is a 30-year-old player who's allegedly world class. The expectation for him coming back from injury, if you put him in the field, he should be the same Rodri, is very different than it would be for Cole Palmer. The expectation for Man City is to be the best team in the world. The expectation for Chelsea is to challenge for top four and make a cup run. Those are very different expectations on the players given their respective club status and their ages and their overall quality. And I do feel like I wouldn't have the same expectations for Rodri coming back from injury and getting back to match fitness as I would for Cole Palmer, any more than I would, Messi coming back from injury. He doesn't get a 1 year runway for poor performances like Rodri has. Different levels and different positions, but I think that point stands. Is this the biggest upset in the history of the Champions League?
um I wouldn't say this is the biggest because remember in September of 2021, we had a team called Sheriff, FC Sheriff from Moldova that went to the Santiago Bernabeu Stadium and got a win against Real Madrid against all odds. Everybody was surprised that a team like that can come to the Bernabeu Stadium and get a 2-0 win. So for me, they won away from home. So I think I would take that as one of the biggest upset compared to this one because Bodo Glimt were playing at home. So they have the support of their fans. So all that could help a team to get a win. But for Sheriff, they were playing away from home. So it's more difficult for them going away to get victory. So I think that to me stands out compared to this. But we must commend this club for defeating Manchester City. That's a big plus for them.
It's very impressive. I'll say that I saw Sheriff play against Roma in the Conference League in 2023. It might have been Europa League. I think it was Conference League, and they got wrecked. They were not very good. Roma did very well. I think it was 5 or 6-0. Roma Stadium was pretty awesome though. And the Sheriff fans were had this little corner and they were chanting and they had a great atmosphere though. But I think that I've been to some of these clubs and I've like seen you ask them like what's your greatest. They always remember when they beat a giant. I've
Yes, yes, yes.
you ask some teenager like I remember when we beat Manchester City one time and that's if you ask a old timer they might tell you of a time in the 80s or 90s where they won in the cup run and they beat a Premier League team. I think that as far as resource gaps go, I mean, Macclesfield over Crystal Palace happened a couple weeks ago, not in the Champions League. I think your Sheriff versus Real Madrid also impressive, but Bodo Glimt right up there, with those performances as some of the biggest one game upsets in terms of like resource gaps and expectations. So it's a great story. I'm sure that there's 42,000 people live in Bodo, which is very isolated. I looked it up on a map, and I think
Yeah.
that any kid under 20 years old is going to remember this the rest of their life, the day they beat Man City.
No, they are going to celebrate seriously. There's going to be a very big celebration
Mm-hmm.
because beating a team being tutored by Pep Guardiola is not something that one should just joke with. That's a very big achievement for them, and it's
Yes,
something that will always be in their memory.
that's right. Okay, so I'm going to close out today's discussion with our typical questions. Please respond on social media. Let us know your thoughts. Is this the biggest ever Champions League upset you've ever seen, or what about upset in general? What do you think has happened to Rodri? Do you think that he needs time? Do you think that he will ever return back to his best? And last question: do you think that Man City under Pep will return back to the machine that we've known them in as the past, or do you think that maybe a change in scenery is better for both Pep and City in order to retain that? Let us know your thoughts. Respond on social media. I appreciate you listening, and until next time, Football Discussion Daily. Peace out.